Good morning. This is Thursday of the Rendezvous. It's our only rain day, so we've been very, very lucky so far. It's been a lot of fun. What a much easier year, huh? How about it? So, a couple things. We have about 120,000 people following us now, which is pretty amazing. And yeah, and also Rick asked me to say that there's an RV down on Court Street. Someone's RV is there. It really needs to be moved as they start setting up the auction. I don't know whose it is. It's by Subway, yeah. So if anybody knows whose that is, kind of help us out a little bit here.
Lost and found?
Lost and found. Sunglasses. Is that all we got left? Did anybody claim the...
Did you get your hotel key?
No, it's all right. I make it every day.
Okay. All right, so I think we're ready to go. First up is going to be Pat McVay from Whidbey Island in the state of Washington. Now, Pat's not been to the Rendezvous before, but he's part of this big family of carvers that truly, and I've said it before, without what they've done on the West Coast, none of this would be happening. And I'm not going to say much more because I'm going to let him take you there.
Thank you. I'm first. I'm a straight man.
No?
Liz.
Do we need to share this?
Oh, you can if you want, but I'll introduce him later.
Well, we're just going to kind of tag team.
Yeah, they're going to tag team. Liz, go ahead and introduce him too.
Should I introduce him now? Do it
Right.
now?
Yes.
Okay, wait a minute. We're gonna back up here a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. They're gonna tag team. Things have changed a little bit here. Welcome to their world, okay? So when I asked Steve to come do this, oh, it was so exciting because I really wanted them here. And when Ed asked him for his biography, he said, "Well, what else but Carver Scarf?" So
I'm not
prepared
wasting
a little
away.
something for you.
Food?
Okay, this is Steve's self-introduction. Okay, which one is you? That is Pat McVay.
That's Pat and Eileen.
And that's you as a baby?
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
This is a way to explain our family history a little bit. There is Steve didn't know this photo was going to be on here, so I was visiting my sister, older sister, who's Steve's mother, and she opened up an old album, and so I said, "Oh, I've gone to the Rendezvous. I got to take a photo of this and surprise Steve with it." So this is when Steve was born. My sister met his dad. She was 19, and a year later, here's Steve, and we were. So I'm 10 years older. I remember the day that I was told that I was an uncle. I was out looking through the bushes for my frog that got away, and my mom told me, "Hey, Pat, you're an uncle." And so oh, that's great. Where's my frog? And, so anyway, this is little Steve.
Little Steve.
And there he is again. Now, if you were at the bar last night, you could see. No, anyway.
That's funny. There's his passport photo. Okay. Okay, I'll leave it.
They got me.
No.
And,
Oh, yeah. There I was at the Royal. Oh, shit.
So Steve's dad was a logger, and he a tramp logger that went all over in the woods of Oregon, Washington, California, and the family went with. And my dad was and Steve's grandpa was a logger part-time, and he was actually a deep sea diver, and that he learned during World War II. And he would after the war, he would use his diving skills to go in the rivers and lakes and salvage timber. And there were all these beautiful old growth logs that had sunk down into the water that nobody could salvage anymore. And so he went down and, harvested all this wood and built sawmills. And, my older brother Mike is the one that got us started carving. And he started goofing around with a chainsaw when he was helping my dad and making goofy fence posts and carvings out with a chainsaw, and nobody had done that he knew of, and so that's some of the roots of the family history.
That would have been about 1957.
I don't know, do we need this?
You can use it.
You do. You do.
So, so anyway, that tells some of the history. Then my brother Mike, Steve's uncle, took the art form a little further, where he was got in a bad car accident. He was broke all the bones on the left side of his body. He was in the hospital for about 6 months, and he read about a guy down in Northern California who had carved the trees of mystery, which are the giant redwood pieces that are in Northern California near the Oregon border. And so he thought, well, maybe I'll try some of that as therapy when I get out of the hospital. So in order to build up his strength again and all that, he started doing small wood carvings, using a chainsaw and a router, and then he used paint and that kind of thing, and he figured out a way to burn it so that it was a different technique, and just one thing led to another. Pretty soon he had a big shop, and he had another guy working for him, and then a company started that called Whitco, and they copied some of his designs, and who knows, he probably copied some of theirs too. But Whitco wood carvings went on for quite a while. And was that based in Oregon?
No, it was in Lacona, Washington.
Oh, in Washington State. Okay, so anyway, this is back in the '60s, right? In
Late
the early,
'60s, early '70s.
Yeah, late '60s, early '70s.
Late '60s, early '70s. They went out of business in 1976.
Yeah, you're right. You hold on to that. So then Mike, my brother's saw shop, or his carving shop, he really had a good business going, and he was making a lot of carvings, and then it burned down. The guy who was working for him fell asleep smoking a cigarette, and the whole damn place burned down, and so he gave up on it and went over and overseas, and he worked. My dad was a deep sea diver at the time, and so he went over there and worked with him in the Persian Gulf, and my dad was the first diver in there that was and he met these guys, this Arab guy who also happened to have a boat company, and they were trying to dive for oysters and pearls, and they found that people who hold their breath could get the pearls out faster, and they already got them all anyway. So the Western technology got turned into they met these people from Aramco, a small company, oil company, and so then they wound up being a diver for Aramco, helping put in deep sea ports and everything they have over there now. And my brother Mike, the wood carver, sort of had a hiatus on carving for quite a while until he came back to the States. And then that's when he came back to Steve, our sister Judy. He came back, and Steve was, how old were you then when Mike came back from Europe? 12. He was 12, and then I came back about a year later, and I was over there visiting too, and so we all worked together. Mike taught our older sister, his mother, to carve, and then when Steve was 16, he started carving, and so we had a kind of a motto: the family that carves together starves together. And so everybody just sort of tried to pitch in and do what they could, and then later on, we started going to shows. Mike, there's a big fair out there called the Puyallup Fair, which is about the fifth largest state fair in the nation, and so he would be the featured carver there. He was the only carver we really knew of in the area, and they decided to put on a competition one day, and we thought maybe there'd be a couple other carvers out there, and we were really surprised this very first competition that 10 carvers showed up from all over that we'd never seen, heard of, or anything, and it was really a pretty amazing event. We had to carve totem poles, and how old were you then?
I was 22, and there was no social media in those days, so the word just got out by rumor mostly. Somebody'd hear about something here, and they would call or sometimes just show up. And there was actually 17 that showed up at that first contest in Puyallup.
Oh yeah, okay.
What year?
Steve, I was better.
1981, September of 1981, and
it was quite an event. You had pole, 23-foot cedar log, and you had to carve an 18-foot totem pole, and then you leave the rest of, they put it in the ground, but we had to do it in 6 hours. And I'd never carved a 3D piece before. I'd been playing around making signs and little wall hangings. And so while everybody was out there carving their totem poles, I took mine and I took an Alaska mill and I cut my totem in 3 pieces, and then I Alaska milled the whole thing up into big boards, and I made a big mural that was a scene of the fair. And then I got disqualified, but I'm still in the first contest.
Rebel.
And then the next year was the same sort of rules. You could use a chainsaw or chisels. Those were the tools. And then the fair basically told all the carvers what to do. So I don't know if you probably had this experience where if you're not involved with a carver that knows what you're doing and how you have to go through all this stuff to produce a carving at a show, then you wind up jumping through flaming hoops a lot of times. You know, they have no idea what it takes, and so, well, can't you guys just do this and that? You know, and so the carvers started getting fed up with being told what to do for unreasonable rules, and so we decided to form a guild, and that was what, the 3rd year we were there?
No, 87, February of 87, we formed the guild. That was, but at the first contest, as so often happens, and it's happened here, a lot of the competitions in Europe, we probably trace the roots right back to Ridgeway. At the first contest in Puyallup in 81, a fellow named Walt Crane came down from another fair. He was a judge. He thought, well, this is cool. I'm going to do it at our fair. So he went back there. So the next year we had 2 shows to go to. And then Duke Moore, who was lived on Mount Rainier and was a famous carver, he passed away since then. Well, Rod Blair went to high school with Duke's sons. So all these, it's a pretty incestuously small group back then, and so Duke started a show up in Mount Rainier in 1983, and then during the early 80s there became this little run of contests. Every year we'd look forward to go to them. We'd load up and head off, and everyone knows how that is. The show's coming, you get your truck loaded, and off you go. And by then we're starting to get pissed off at these shows that are telling us what to do, and that's when we formed the guild to kind of establish guidelines and rules and make it so we didn't get screwed every time we go to a show. Things like oh geez.
One of the biggest problems we had was that the fair started charging the carvers to be in the contest. Oh. And then so you'd have to pay. I remember this is a long time ago, so change it for inflation now, but it was $150, which was a lot of money to come up with 30 years ago. And then they put all the totems in an auction at the end, and they auctioned them off to the highest bidder. It was $150 minimum.
Silent auction.
And it was a silent auction. So then they took the money and they split it between all the carvers. I'm pretty sure that's how it went. And there was a little bit of prize money in there too. Anyway, basically, what it wound up is, you did all this work, and then you paid $150 to be in the event, and then by the time you got your money, you got $50. So you're only $100 behind after doing all that work. So the fellow that Steve mentioned, Duke Moore, he was a carver, and so he's the first time that we had a carver run a show. So he said, well, you guys get to keep your carvings. There's no charge for being in the show. So, and then we're not going to do totems. I have these great big fat pieces of cedar. So we changed the format to where you didn't have to carve a traditional totem anymore. You could do anything you wanted, any design, and you could use any tools. And all of a sudden, the carving was yours now to keep. And so that made a big change because now the carvers were running the show. And so Steve went from Duke's contest one time with a whole load of carvings. And he passed through this little coastal town with the family, and it was called Westport. And so he pulled in there and needed a place to stay.
Well, I left the contest at Duke's place. Wife, dog, rocking chair, chickens, everything hanging off the truck. And tried to trade for a carving to stay in a motel because I was fairly thrifty and I didn't want to get rid of my cash. And anyone that's traveled with carvings, you can trade for almost anything. And got turned down like 4 times and ended up at this little town in Westport. And the hotel owner the next morning was sitting there drinking coffee with him and telling him, what I would just done and came from this cool show. And he was like, "Oh, what would it take to do something like that?" And I said, "Oh, $5,000. And we both had a good laugh. And I think he came up with $365. But I had a family connection at a big mill right 20 miles away in Hoquiam. And I could get these big spruce butt cuts. And out there, they grow so huge that we got, it's like 5 and 6 foot diameter spruce, and we cut them into big quarters, which were great wood. And we had 8 carvers show up, and we did the first show within 30 days of meeting him, and that was one of the first shows that we were running, independent. The town didn't have a clue what we were doing, and we had no one to really tell us what to do, and we started really developing the guidelines and the rules, and probably it was the year later we'd heard about Tupper Lake contest where they had an auction, the highest piece, because we had a quick carve that first year, but we didn't really know what to do with them. How to get judged at, to get people to come out and judge. It's a real pain in the butt. So the next year they had the auction. Whoever wins highest wins the show. And it's like, well, heck, that works. So we started doing that, and then that gave us some funding, because no one's ever really willing to sponsor this stuff in a big way. You've got to really hustle. So it was kind of we didn't quite invent the auction, but we certainly perfected it and created a self-funding mechanism for the chainsaw carving gatherings, and it grew, and it grew into a beautiful Frankenstein, kind of like here. It's like, wow, look at all this stuff, but so that you always be giving the Bonnies a ton of praise, because behind the scenes, year round, there's a wheel turning constantly that never, ever, 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 ever stops turning. So when we all get to land and hang out, the networks of carvers that come together, you come here, you meet somebody, you become good friends. There's, it doesn't always happen, but most of the time, people go home and try their event. And, so from our humble beginnings on the West Coast, there's been a ripple effect that's kind of spread out for a long time, over a long period of time. And we just liked hanging out with chainsaw carvers. Cowboys like hanging out with cowboys, cops hang out with cops. We like hanging out with chainsaw carvers. And we had to develop the gene pool, get a little bigger, so we had more people to hang out with.
We just always had a come one, come all invitation to everybody, and people would say, "Well, I never tried carving with the chainsaw. I got a skill saw. I'm a carpenter." And so one guy came out and he had a skill saw and he tried to carve his whole giant, huge,
unbelievable.
But we took this little town on the coast where it was the deadest weekend of the whole year. I mean, you could have shot a cannon from one end to the other. But it's a really great little fishing town because they all go fishing for salmon and tuna right out of there. And so within 5 years, I think it was the busiest weekend of the whole year for everybody at that town. And then I think it ran 16 years.
16 years.
16 years. And we went from 8 people the first time, and I think we added up to 140 or something one time.
70 carvers at once was the peak year, and it was like 2001 when the Japanese came to the show, and we all know what happened when they went back and started spreading the word. And so it's these connections in these networking places, and we also created, which is going on here as well, an educated buying public. So all the people that came to the shows were customers. You go to a county fair somewhere, 15,000, 20,000 people come to a show. Well, they're there to see the tractors and the pig races and stuff like that. But at chainsaw carving events, our customer base is just people that want to come and see what we're doing. And as you're well aware of, you have people that come every year and they like you, they buy your stuff, they get their pet carver, they bring their friends back. And, an educated buying public is, it's very important to us because, and they know what things are going for. They know what deals are. They know who the good stuff is. And and then if everyone carves and makes money, then you want to come back. And that's what happened at that little dead-end peninsula. It was a peninsula on this little town. And it would just, they complained about parking. And if you're complaining about parking, that's a really good thing to have at an event. And it went on for a number of years, 16, so it's been over 10 years now. And everything has a cycle. it began a lot of carvers' careers. And I would, anybody that stopped by, if they had a chainsaw in their truck and said, "Hey, I tried this once," I'd say, "Get your saw, get over here. Here's a log, stand it up." And you would see the fright in their eyes, and they're get all big and white, you know. And then the next year they're back as a steely-eyed professional, hugging and kissing everybody, and they're in the gang. And that's what we like. We like people being in our gang. We're kind of like the biker Vikings of the art world.
And all this was before the internet. You know, before the internet, we had a newsletter we put out. At first, it started out as a little copy on one sheet of paper, and with the minutes of the meeting, basically. And then we developed the Cutting Edge, thanks to Jessie Groshin, who also wrote a really beautiful book about carving. A few years ago, she was here, and she and I started the Cutting Edge, and so we would take pictures of where we went, and then we'd write up articles, and we'd tell people, send us in something, send us in, and then of course you always had somebody who said, "Why wasn't my picture in the last issue?" But we had, and then there were other people who's like, "That SOB owes me some money. Can you put this letter in there for me?" So we had to edit out a few of those things and kept it on the up and up, the positive. And so there's a lot of history in these. If you ever get a chance, a lot of these have been scanned now, and you can access them digitally. And so a lot of things people are talking about now about, well, how do you put on an event, or what do you do for rules, or what do you do for judging, or whatever different discussions about. A lot of this was written up 20 years or more ago, and history is repeating itself. So it helps to go back and look through some of these things. And there were some, and then we had the international events started happening once people started showing up.
I would just like to say that golden chainsaw at that particular event, I did beat Jeff Samadusky. Duly noted.
And like Steve says, a lot of the money that to help produce these things, it's a tremendous amount. You know, you need a lot of volunteers, a lot of endless time and labor. You need money to do everything. The porta potties need to be put in place. The food needs to be set up, and so there you have it at both ends. No, but the wood and just the prizes, whatever it may be, it's a tremendous amount. And I've always said, well, we need more sponsors. You know, we can. And one guy said, well, we're going to look like NASCAR with patches all over your clothes. By this sponsor, that sponsor, whatever. But basically, most of it got financed by the quick cards, and so the money from that got plowed right back into the expenses, which I think is unfortunate, because I think the artists should not have to support their event. They shouldn't have. It would be nice if we had these rich sponsors that could just come in and pay for everything, but it doesn't happen. So what are you going to do? We're going to have a discussion about that. If anybody has ideas later about, how to make it easier on the sponsors and the carvers, but hospitality, we found, goes way a long way. So if you have good hospitality, then people are going to feel happy, and it's going to be a great get together, and they're going to want to come back. And so, is that more cutting edge? Yeah, Elmer Hickey here in the audience.
Let's give Elmer a big hand.
I remember when I was folding newsletters and putting labels on, and Elmer Hickey, I remember mailing those things to you. What was it, 30 years ago or something?
This year, if you get on the Cascade Guild's website, these are the back issues of the newsletter going back to '93.
And if you take the time to kind of check it out and follow it, it kind of gives an evolution. Because once we hit the digital age and things really exploded, a lot of the events these are like the boilerplate guidelines. Because you couldn't make up too many rules. Chainsaw carvers are such an unruly bunch; they don't like following too many rules. So you had to have some fairly well-established guidelines.
Yeah, and we would, the way we did this is, like I said before, computers. So we would take photos, and we'd trim around the edges to get rid of some of the bad background. We'd type up the articles and then cut those out with scissors, and then we'd glue them all on paper and then photocopy them and then take them to a printer, and then they'd print out 300 copies, and then we'd sit there around a big table, and everybody'd have something in their glass, and then we'd fold all these things, and then we'd put stamps on them, and the expense of the printing and the postage was most of it. And then now you have the computer, the digital age, so we have some folks interested in now in taking over the newsletter, and it can just be sent by email, and rather than pay, it was still the old $20 a year, which has never changed for 30 years, so it helps defray expenses. For the editor gets about $100 a month for doing all their work, but it's really great to have that newsletter come in from all over the world, and then you can send it out. Now you have the forums, all this other stuff which never existed before, but once the internet hit, then it spread all over the world really fast. So we're trying to catch you up on all the stuff before digitalizing. And
it just, there was a lot of dedicated people doing it, and everything that we did in those days went against every business person's instincts. Don't tell anyone else how to do this stuff. Keep this a secret. And we went the absolute opposite direction and just spread the word. And in doing so, we like to think that we help create the educated buying public, because 30 years ago you're carving alongside the road, you're sitting up next to the guy that's selling the Mexican paintings too, and they treated us like that. And the hand carvers, of course, you were sacrilegious to use, and it's just and it's like when the hand carvers and the power carvers they had their spats over a period of time, and we were always on the outside edge. We're the rough bunch, out there in the pickup trucks, and and what I see now is all three of them art forms or methods merging into what you see now when you see some of these sculptors, like they're doing some holy jeez, I mean, it's intimidating even to someone like myself to go walk around and look at some of the stuff that people are doing these days. It's like, how the hell they pull that off? And but as the word spreads, and we get more people buying carvings, more people can make a living at it, and it's a full-on industry right now. I mean, back 30 years ago, you had your pickup truck and you take off and travel. But probably right now as we speak, there's a dozen UPS trucks driving somewhere to deliver some kind of carving to somebody, and there's tools, and the whole interchange of that it's international, and the scope of it, I don't see any end in sight.
Do you want to show them we have a couple of little short films too that show the Westport event when it was about 2000. Right?
One of the things along the path is, as you start doing something and it starts gaining a little notoriety, you don't get known until the people that write about it, the photojournalists, the people, the news. I mean, it's the people that record what's going on. When they start paying attention, the newspaper articles, the TV stuff, documentaries, and Westport grew to this, big show that it was. And this one here, the Seattle show, a fellow at the time, his name was, called him Johnny Seattle. I thought that was his real name for like 10 years. And his real name is John Evison. And he's a well-published author at this point. And he just had his current book, The Fundamental of Caregiving. They made it into a movie with Paul Rudd and Selena Gomez, and it just got picked up at the Sundance Film Festival for like $7 million. But when he came down and hung out with us, and we got him all boozed up, he was just trying to make a documentary kind of to how the unemployed logger, spotted owl type of crowd transitioned from that type of industry into the chainsaw carving industry. And that was what he was trying to capture. So this is, it's like, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes, and it never got finished, but this is a good clip, so we'll just watch it.
And Johnny Call, he just came down and he had such a great time with all the carvers that he came back a couple other times too, but like Steve said, he never finished this, but he called this West of Here because that was an idea he was working on. And since then, now it's just been 15 years, he finally published his book called West of Here, and it was on the New York Times bestseller list. And so if you get a chance to read it, a couple years ago it came out, and it's a little history of this area where the event happened.
The Northern Olympic Peninsula and the Elwha Dam that they dismantled in the last few years. His story kind of follows that. And he does throw us a bone in the book and mention chainsaw carving.
So I'm going to get out of the way.
Need the mic?
You serving popcorn?
Steve,
Yes.
was it Evanson?
Evison.
Evison. Jonathan Evison.
Cool guy.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's a really great guy.
He's funny.
We gotta get together and drink some more beer. What's more research?
Five-minute break.
Be the first true person that actually tried to make art in particular. I've been carving for 5 years. I just do a bit of art. I mean, I didn't draw a straight line until 5 years ago. If I was a kid carver, I'd probably be big. My name is Kyle Thomas. I'm a chainsaw artist. I've been carving for about 18 years. If I wasn't a carver, I'd be depressed without the right to express my freedom. Wow. I love the sense of power. I love the creativity. I started dancing. The carvers are all a bunch of loners and almost hermit-type people. 90% of them are. They don't want anybody messing with them. And what the Westport especially has done is create a brotherhood. And there might be a carver show up that we've never even met that can be an asset. It happens. They come out of the woodwork. That's part of why Westport's a wide open show, is if you can show up there with a chainsaw, feed you, give you some gas, and let you carve. And my first Westport, I got up there and I looked around. And I felt like Wayne's going, I'm not worthy. I mean, these carvings. I thought I knew about chainsaw carving. Nothing about chainsaw carving. Westport, scales will fall off your eyes.
Taking over my backyard, which is cool, because I love it. They do some fantastic stuff. They're a great bunch of people, a lot of fun to hang around. And we hope to keep coming back year after year. It's been fantastic.
You want to go right into the next one?
Sure. Oh, well.
Back up there?
Oh, let's do this for a little while.
Not- Yeah, say something. Give me- Buy me some time.
We'll buy us some time here.
You got the right guy.
We have another movie about Westport a year later, right?
Yeah, the next one won't show up a little bit, and Peter Wyant, the guy that is responsible for the videos that we have, filmed the next one in the year 2000, and it's a little bit longer, and he kind of really captured the family aspect
Your carving
of it.
panties, we need you to carve something here.
Is that the one?
So anyone have any questions? We do a little Q&A.
Was that Conrad with the big chainsaw running behind
That was Conrad Sandoval with the big chainsaw. Yeah, I mean, Conrad, what happened a lot at the Westport show is you never know who's going to show up. somebody like Conrad would show up, Alexander Safanov, people like that, they would show up and they would change the game. Everyone's like, oh! And they got to hurry up, and it's like, oh my God, it's been upped. And they would show up out of nowhere. When Conrad showed up, I don't know if you've ever seen Alexander Safanov online and stuff. He's a Russian artist, and I met him when he'd been in America for like 3 weeks, and he had to have a job, and he wanted to carve, and so he came to me, and I look at his book, and it says, Eastern European sculpture, and I'm like, what do you want me to tell you? But he's, because he was just coming to America, he had to go to work, and I had a shop over in the world there, Linwood by Seattle, for a couple of years, and I was a terrible shopkeeper. And the next morning there was a little event that we had at this hardware store down in Puyallup, and Sasha had never even held a chainsaw at that point. And I had him talked into going to that. So I met him at 3 in the afternoon, and 9 o'clock the next morning on Saturday, I had him with a chainsaw down there. He carved his very first chainsaw carving. Anyone that's followed Sasha can look at his stuff now and see what he's done with the chainsaw after that. But when he came down to Westport, he was just, he was so brilliant, everyone's like catching up with him. And then Conrad comes to Westport, and Sasha's out there looking at Conrad's stuff going, what I do with this guy? So, the bar just kept getting raised, and it was really kind of laid the foundation for a lot of stuff that's going on there. And the wood was that's the beauty of the chainsaw, is you're making pretty monumental sculpture where, 50 years ago they would have been out there with an axe and a saw is trying to reduce it down. The chainsaws pushed it, and then the hand carvers bringing that talent into the game. After learning how to use the chainsaw, we all can get online and see where it's going these days. Here you go, Pat.
Is this the one, Steve? Is that next one?
No.
No.
No, don't play that one.
Okay.
That's the last one. That's just a short one. That it'll be dessert.
Yeah. We'll have to run out after that one.
Jerry.
You're talking about new people coming in and bringing a new game. What about when the sawmills came in?
Oh, I'll touch on that one. Rob McElfresh was a friend of Kerry Hargan's, and in 1998, I was working to get a sawmill to come to the show. For one, I think sawmills are cool, and boards are so important now. We take it kind of for granted. We got Rob to show up. He came in 1999. He showed up with an LT40 Woodmiser. He was a hillbilly like the rest of us, and he set up, and he was just getting ready to start carving. He was friends with Kerry, and we got them big spruce logs, and we spewed the boards out and gave everyone nice big planks. So everyone carved benches in the quick carve. Auction doubled. Never looked back. Sawmills are an integral part of events now, because without the boards and the lumber, and once the auction money went up, you could do more things. Get a color brochure on the program, buy T-shirts, because all that kind of stuff stacks up. Prize money, medals, porta potties. And then of course we didn't have any self-restraint when it came to inviting everybody, and so it was like a rock concert. And just for the record, Rob now lives in Craig, Alaska, and he's building a retirement home for old chainsaw carvers. So if you get to Craig, Alaska, which is about 150 miles west of Ketchikan, look Rob up. He'd be happy to have you.
He took his sawmill with him up there, so.
Brand new one. He's a hero.
And then also, because we've always just wanted to have things more loose than tight, we always loosen the rules up. So when the sawmills came in, all of a sudden people could make murals now and other things like furniture, all kinds of things, rather than just a three-dimensional sculpture. And that really did help change the game. It's really a fabulous thing. We had so much wood there. It was incredible. Everybody had pick your log, and then we had these huge piles left over of wood, and the mill just really ate up a lot of that, and the carvers ate up all the boards too.
Yeah, well, we would give the board, and when the show's over, we would give boards to carvers, because here's the bonus, man, and 2 foot wide, 7 foot spruce planks. That's $1,000 bench when you get home and make it. So it was it allowed us to be a little bit more generous by giving the carvers planks to make whatever they wanted to make, and we would just spew the wood out. And we had a lot of that wood because, you know, everything is built on relationships. And we got the wood originally for the competition at Westport because my mom's ex-husband's brother ran the mill and owned it so we could get the wood. So, and then it changed over to Weyerhaeuser, and the guy that ran the big picking machine in the yard for the export yard, his brother used to live next door to me when I was a kid in Hump Tulips and would buy us beer. And he came to Hump Tulips in 1973 and got some tips from my mom and Mike McVay, his older brother, on how to be carvers. So he was kind of an amateur carver at that time. So when the Westport event happened, I had this guy that was an old friend that ran the big machine in the yard. So with one phone call, hey Lance, how's the wood? Oh, I got it stuffed away, Steve. And there would be 2 logging truck loads of, you know, 4-foot diameter logs, 40-foot long. And one phone call, and they get dropped off there. I mean, and that's kind of how these events happen. And if we would have had to buy that wood, it would have just been astronomical. But it was really, really handy.
Yeah, and the wood that we used for Westport that we could get was Sitka spruce, which is a giant coastal wood that grows right along the ocean. So the sand blows in off the ocean, and so all the bark's full of sand, and it's like carving sandpaper for the first couple inches, and then once you get past there, it's a lot like pine, and it's really high tensile strength. You know, they make airplane propellers out of it, fishing spars, that kind of thing. And the reason we got the butt cuts is because they were harvesting these trees, and they would ship the trees off to Japan because the government gave the mills a tax credit if they would ship the whole log away as one piece. So basically they shipped all the jobs away too, because rather than giving the tax credit for leaving it here and paying people to saw it up in this, you know, in this area, they just basically emptied out all these timber towns with the last of the timber they had. And the reason why we got the ends of the log, the big butt cuts, is because they were too big to load up on the ships for a straight load. And so they were going to chip all these up for toilet paper, basically. And so there was a value there, of course. And they'd sell the sawdust to we'd go overseas to Japan generally. So anyway, we put those logs to some pretty good use.
Here, just a funny story. And when you get the logs there, they would spray paint on the end of the logs, spruce pulp, SP. And we had this one carver show up. And he was so pissed off. That SP guy had every friggin' log.
Okay, ready for the movie? What do you think?
Ready?
Is this?
Yeah.
We'll do the next one.
Wait, what's that?
This is Pete's.
Oh, this is okay. This is about Westport 2000.
Yeah, this is a little bit longer, and it's really cool.
Peter Wyatt did this film. He did the others too.
And all the whole family asked, in my opinion, Ridgeway has replaced what we had there. I mean, it brings the same kind of gathering together.
Down 4 times in 50 miles since we got here.
Well, this will be on my windows, right?
Sure, I'll trade you a little barrel of electric guitar. He traded that to me for a room. And got here about 5 in the afternoon and left the next day about noon. And have a coffee with him. I said I'd just come from a chainsaw carving contest, and he said, "Oh yeah, what's it take to have one of those?" And I said, "Oh, we need $5,000 and a lot of wood." And boy, we both laughed our butts off. And he said he'd see what he can do. And he came up with $365.
Nautical theme too.
Put everything in the house.
That's skill.
And the carving
Holy
contest,
cow.
especially here at Westport, has absolutely changed my life because they gave me the guts to do carvings. So if Steve Backus hadn't shaved
And so I picked up the phone on a dare right there, and I called my boss and said, well, sorry, but I quit. I'm now a pro carver. And he actually wished me luck and sent me on my way. Good enough. He wished me luck, and that's a life-changing deal right there. I mean, just someone giving you the shove you needed at the right time to do something that you were probably meant to do.
No, I don't like to push him. The man wakes up at 6:30 in the morning, looks at the clock, watches the clock, wait for it to get late enough so he can turn that song on. I have to stop him to eat. He's sitting there doing this dance while he's carving. And what's the matter, honey? I gotta go to the bathroom. Slow down and go. No, I gotta do this.
Bigger than the pallet. I got fond memories of that machine.
See the little 14-year-old Stephen Higgins?
Right there.
Watched me carve over the years. I try to return thanks to God by giving him honor and blessing him with the talents that he gave to me.
Oh, they're terrible. But in such a nice way, though. You know, you just.
We're kind of the biker Vikings of the Army.
Yes, that's right. Biker Vikings. You know, outside of being avant-garde, and you know, that seems to be passed on to other people. Just associating with them and staying out of the way. You know, let the chips fly where they fly.
People like it, even if you're not a carver. You know, Bubby's a logger and a shade cutter and involved in the wood industry since childhood here in the Grays Harbor area. And he just likes coming here and being caught up in all the energy that's going on. I mean, part of the show.
Absolutely. That's it. The showmanship is a good part of that.
It's kind of like a rock concert or something, you know.
And it's catchy. You gotta watch out. It's one of the most dreaded diseases ever to catch. It's self-curing. It's self-curing as long as it's self-applied.
True enough. It's a self-applied sentence, too.
It gets you to really get out of your own personal isms.
It's involved 59 carvers, and we had probably about $15,000 in prize money and prizes, and you know, the biggest crowds we've ever had. I'm certain the biggest crowds Westmore's ever had for any singular event. I'm sure the big spike on the Department of Revenue graph will be able to bear my feelings true. And it's turned into a highly successful show amongst the woodcarver world. It's the biggest, best one going. And I please invite anyone to prove me wrong, because I'd love to go to another show and not have to do nothing but carve.
How do you feel about all the young carvers, like the 9-year-olds and stuff that are coming in? Was there safety issues or age limits you're gonna put on that competition?
speed limits, I wouldn't want to run a race with hobbles on it. And as for Alex being a 9-year-old, I mean, it wasn't like he was out here freely whipping the saw around. I mean, he had Grandma sitting on his chair right there with the yardstick ready to whack him alongside the head if he got that line. And he actually did most of his work with the router. I mean, we call it chainsaw carving contest, but it's unlimited. We use all sorts of tools. And he actually didn't use the saw a whole lot. And a lot of growing up in the carving world is you don't just start out being, the great carver. You burn and you brush and you sand.
And I would also like to thank my mom, Backus, for helping me go and make me a carver, and Judy McVay, my grandma, and Backus, my uncle.
Starting to look like a family show around here. All right, we also have another award for the most senior carver who's been out there participating, and that honor goes to my mother, Judy McVay. Okay. She doesn't want to climb, but she doesn't want to cry. All right, make that. All right. Big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. All right.
Youngest and oldest.
For the most part, we've formed a pretty tight bond of family and friends. All right, big round of applause for Conrad, everybody. This is a real special day for not only for us wood carvers, but for me personally. Those of you who come to these events know that I try to make a witness for Jesus Christ at these events. And all of my time spent is an honor to him. And Niall and Jeannie have taken up the crossfights. And as a result, we have a couple that really had a long-standing relationship of some 18 years. Decided that they needed to walk in accountability to
That's
Christ.
Don Colt, Mark Colt's dad.
If I only know how that king would fall, fearless to say, I might have changed it all, and these folks have made a real special decision.
Cotton chains.
I can't buck it up or do that kind of stuff.
have to do something for me that makes it. So I started in November and I've been doing it. Now it's supporting itself so well. Now it's, I got nobody telling me when I got to be there, so I get up earlier and I work longer. I like speak something beautiful. Oh, yeah, I forgot that. No, when somebody like you or somebody else comes up, they take pictures too. That's the big kick in the pants that makes more than anything else because I'm so much. I put my sweat and blood into it.
If you don't do something that help out, it's not worthwhile. You gotta do something that helps things go better.
That's fresh tuna right off the boat.
Everybody is too much for themselves and not enough for helping each other. And the whole world is getting better. But that's all right. If I can set a better example, that's good, right? That's right. And these carvers don't have a penny to their name. And they can't do a good job if they're hungry. Can we get what it is? Tuna. Fresh tuna. You know what I get up? Thank God there's another day. And I don't care what the weather's like. You know? If it's raining, fine. If it's snowing, it's just great too. No, thank God I can feed nuts. And didn't used to have that philosophy when I was younger. I'm the piece that right there.
Wow. Wow.
One that they're using on the large master sculpture pieces, they're using Sitka spruce. Now, Sitka spruce is a species of wood that's indigenous to this area, and also is used as you know, the spruce goose that Howard Hughes built is made out of the same type of Sitka spruce. Now, Sitka spruce has a little bit of history for it. It was utilized in the United States government. Came to the Olympic Peninsula around World War I, and they discovered this spruce was one of the primest woods to use in military aircraft for the propellers. So what they did is they actually built cradle systems going into the Olympic mountains in order to harvest Sitka spruce, so that the U.S. government can utilize that for in their aircraft.
They know what they want. We use whatever tools we get. We get it for free or whatever, and you end up wearing the stuff out, and the stuff that lasts. And different saw companies, just like different car companies, I compare it to cars a lot. All of them make good stuff. Some of their models are far superior to other models. We want lighter, quieter, less vibration saws. I would love to use Luke Skywalker's lightsaber.
Take a break now, or questions?
The Conrad Sandoval's piece, which one was it? The one,
He carved the, it was like a,
Whales.
it was a whale, but he had little Jesus on there. Everything that he did, he had Jesus involved with it. He's a registered minister. He actually legally married them guys at that show. And so he always, whenever he wins, he always, every time he wins, and which is quite a bit. Although he did tell me one time at Reedsport that I would never beat him in a contest. And he got 10th and I got 8th. And I was at the show and I kind of went up like, I go, is 8th better than 10th?
Was that the one Steven won? First year Stephen ever beat him, I think.
At Reed Sport, that would have been 2002-ish, 3-ish, something like that. Yeah. Stephen Higgins started out as Conrad's apprentice, so he went to live with Conrad when he was like 12 years old, and then basically was an indentured servant type of deal, throughout. So when Stephen would come to the Westport competitions, and then he carved there his first show. I can't recall what year it was, but he carved a really intricate set of tools, or turtles rather. And we all know where Stevie Higgins went. He just.
Conrad and his wife kind of came up in rough beginnings, and so they met while they were, I think, in juvenile detention, and they fell in love. And when they got out, they, were in two separate places actually somehow. And anyway, they adopted a lot of foster kids, and Stephen Higgins was one of their kids. And although Conrad always gave a big speech when he won about his faith, he never really went around and proselytized to everyone. If somebody was swearing, he'd say, "Don't explain to me. Explain to your maker."
Yeah. He
also John Schultz, if you've ever heard of John Schultz out there in the Idaho, Eastern Washington area. He started his career as an apprentice to Conrad 25 years ago. And then John has 3 brothers, and they all carve too. And anyone that's been to the West Coast and seen the Black Bear diners, they're up and down from Sacramento to Washington State. And Raymond Schultz is the one that is the carver that does all them Black Bear diners. And I'm sure he just fell ass backwards into that. And someone probably stopped by the shop and said, "Hey, I got a restaurant, can you do this?" And there's like 38 of them between Sacramento and Seattle.
That's how AJ did the same thing, fell backwards into it, and now he does all the
It's often better to be lucky than
barbecue
good.
places, yeah.
I don't know if I can add to it, but he kind of dropped out of the competition scene for a little while, or a long while. He kind of,
Conrad?
Came back in, yeah. I was one of those apprentices that he took on after he left. And he said he didn't want to keep losing friends, so he kind of quit.
Or losing contests.
Yeah, he kind of just wanted to end his prime.
Yeah.
Where were you when you were working with Conrad?
Well, he wanted to do missionary work in Mexico, and so my brother went down with him and was there for about a year, working with him and his wife, the whole family down there. And I guess God was kind of changing my heart at the time, and I ended up going down too because my brother went. So I thought, well, I want to go do missionary work, I'll go down too. And so I checked it out, and that kind of spurred me into learning how to chainsaw carve. Because, I grew up with it with my mom, and so that was all we talked about all the time and everything. And I was like, well, I'm talking about it all the time, I know all the people, why don't I just try it? And so he's the one that put the saw in my hand, and I tried it and thought, hey, this is pretty cool. And then of course I was trying to impress Steve, so that kind of helped. But I ended up sticking with it, and he said, well, I'll teach you how to be a chainsaw carver, but you have to learn how to be a missionary alongside it, or I'm not going to teach you. And I thought, well, that's a no-brainer. So I apprenticed him for 4 years, following around his crazy family and helping raise the kids and stuff.
I think they're in Hawaii now.
Jerry, who's her mother?
Grace Dowling.
Oh, Grace is your mom, all right.
He just made the connection.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Grace.
So actually,
I remember when she came to Westport the first time.
Right, actually, Heather, you came to Westport when you were like 14 with your mom carving, so.
Well, I think I was 10. And
Yeah,
she
maybe.
won first place in novice division, and we were so excited. She'd only been carving for, I think, 2 years at that time.
That would have been 97, 8, 9, right around that area.
That sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, so Grace, her mom, is a very talented chainsaw carver as well. And you come to these events, you meet the people like Conrad, and all of this stuff is multi-layered, built on relationships. The people meet this person, they go there, they try this, they create opportunities, other people create opportunities for you. It's the big cycle of life.
Yeah.
Another question. Westport started in 1990. Do you have any idea how many kind of branched off from that? Ocean Shores.
Yeah, I mean, someone comes to a show, they look around, they say, well, shit, I can do this, and they go home and they try it.
Cedro Woolley.
Yeah, in Western Washington, yeah, the Ocean Shore, Cedar Woolley, there's, you know, and a lot of shows with, you know, I mentioned 3-year life cycle is somebody comes to a show, they get all full of enthusiasm, they go home, they get together with the local Chamber of Commerce, usually 3 years later, they volunteer groups that ground the life out of them, they have no more spirit left and the show kind of dries out. And for me personally, I don't work like with chambers of commerce or committees or anything like that anymore. I work primarily with self-employed, self-motivated entrepreneurs who can make decisions and go through with it and even pay you. Lord forbid, that should happen.
Yeah, it's an endless project if you've never put on an event. It's just, there's all these things you just never would think about, and you have to think it all out. As a matter of fact, Cutting Edge, there was one issue where we put it was a full page, single space of all the things that, if you're thinking of putting on an event, what you might, a checklist basically of what you might need. And so you might, if you can check the archives out. Another thing about I don't want to embarrass you or anything, but your mom sent in a letter once to the editor, and it was, and there was another fellow that sent one in coincidentally at the same time, and they were both single, and they were looking for someone, you know, to maybe that would be of interest, you know, that another carver that has the same interests, that might like to travel, that likes to do art, and so we kind of tweaked the ad a little bit, and we put in there looking for a friend who would like to carve. Chainsaw carver, has their own truck and their own chainsaw. Please send photo of chainsaw and truck.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, this actually, you get on the Cascade Guild, and Jack McIntyre, who was in one of the earlier there, when he was president of the guild, and him and his wife Amy ran it. They came up to Whidbey Island, where Pat and I live, and spent an entire day digging. You know, our organizational system consists of boxes that coffee stained envelopes and things like that nature. And Jack sat there and his wife Amy, and they scanned every newsletter that ever got made into it and put it onto this archive. And if you do get on there and go back in time and look at this stuff, you can kind of chart some of the progress that we made. But it's also a wealth of information on how to go about certain things, and like a lot of the judging rules and guidelines, you know, this is kind of where it started. And it wasn't just me or just Pat, there was a whole brain trust of people that would come together, and we were basically trying to figure out what we needed to do to make things work, and we didn't want to leave it up to, you know, some fair board member or some chamber guy that doesn't have a freaking clue as to what we do and what we need. And the judging thing is, then as now, can leave a lot of grown men in tears when it's over. And the smart ones cry in their truck later on, but they're not all smart. And it's, you know, that's the competitive edge. But as in the early days, it was just competition, because that's kind of all we knew. I mean, it's grown to things like what we have here now, and events and festivals that are centered around it. But the competitive edge of it is still very much out there, and you know, we can get online and look up a ton of stuff along those lines. So Pat and I have been traveling together, because we're not friends, we're related. And since 1981, you know, sleeping in our trucks and traveling long distances. And it, you know, one of the most influential things for us was he seen a little ad in the back of Chip Chats in 1986, and this goofball named Barry Pinsky was having a chainsaw carving contest in Hill City, Minnesota. So we got our $125 and loaded our truck up, and we headed across the ferry. We were broke by the time we got to Spokane, but my aunt, his sister lived there, so we got a base there. We're going to head to Kalispell, where our uncle, and get refinanced hopefully. And on the way out of Spokane, we got pulled over by this lady in a station wagon, and she bought like $500 worth of carvings out of the back of the truck. So we took Highway 2 all the way across. We stopped to visit our uncle in Montana, but we didn't have to ding him for no money. And, you know, we traveled till we got to we were just out of Fargo, not in your country, Wayne. And we had like $40 left. And we had to get to Hill City. We still had a long ways to go, and it's like, well, we're just gonna have a cup of coffee and a bag of peanuts. And some old farmer came out and wanted to buy this little bear. Thank God for little bears. And I said $50, and he turned on his heel and walked right away. And I'll let her slip out of my hand for $2.20s, and he turned right around, and that financed us all the way to Bemidji. And then we got there, and we're down to, a cup of coffee and peanuts again. And then Pat sold the local cop at the gas station like $200 worth of carving. So bam, we were to Hill City. And then when we got down there, we carved with Ray Murphy and Dennis Roger and Larry Jensen. And, and for us, it was the first time that we traveled where nobody had heard of Mike McVay, my uncle, his brother. Because everyone cast shadows. And so we were so far away, it's like, wow, all these other people are doing it. And nobody ever heard of Mike. This is great. And then, of course, Barry, he was like 22 at the time. He had put the show on. And as far as I can tell, that was the very first quick carve, because he had a quick carve, 30-minute quick carve, and it was him and I and Ray Murphy. And no prize money or nothing, we just carved for 30 minutes. There's 11 carvers there, and we're the only ones that give it a try. And I was brutally beaten by them, but I did not care. And so, we came back from Minnesota, and there's a lot of inspiration that goes on. You go to the show, it's like, well, look at how they did that. They had the quick carve. So we had the quick carves in the late 80s, but we didn't really know how, there was no auctions and stuff. So everything's built a layer upon layer upon layer. And then Dennis Roger, who, everyone probably knows about him, went on to have a couple events, and he pretty much apprenticed or had a lot of people work under him. I think Jamie Dornan got his start being a saw mechanic at the shop that Dennis took a saws to. And this relationship here, then it leads to that one, and you meet this person, and then eventually, there's a lot of, it's a multi-layered relationship built type of industry.
Cool. Yeah, I remember when we got to Hill City, Barry Pinsky says, "Yeah, this is the World Championships." And we go, "Oh yeah, we already had 3 of those."
Yeah, we've been to that here.
First ever. Yeah, it was quite a little adventure. I don't know if Steve mentioned, we left town 2,000 miles ago. We had $125 between us, and when we got to Hill City, we'd blown out the rear main seal on our truck, and it was leaking a lot of oil. And
put a gallon of purple bar oil in it at the Montana North Dakota border.
Yeah, we started dumping bar oil in it just so we could get to the next place to find a place open, because we were traveling so early and nothing was open yet. And so we finally, we crossed the Minnesota border and had a flat tire, and then we got attacked by mosquitoes, and then that's when we limped into that gas station and completely broke, and we were trying to figure out what we could buy for 35 cents, and that's when the cop bought all his carvings from us. And so it was nice not to get arrested. And Barry Pinsky had a really cool gorilla carved right on the highway, and it's, standing there like this, and we hadn't met him yet or anything, and it was right across from the little bar. It was when we first got to town, so we found the biggest branch we could and stuffed it between the legs for the traffic in the morning, and went over and met all the locals. And then they said, "Well, there's a place to stay up there on the top of the hill, and it's pretty expensive though." So we went right up there and checked ourselves in, and had no money at all, but by the end of the show, we made enough to fix the truck and pay the room. And we traded them actually a big wood carving we had to do for the inn that we stayed at, and they were happy to trade us, and it's a good thing because we didn't have enough to pay for them really.
Yeah, it makes you hustle.
And then we hit a deer on the way home going through Montana, but it was a great road trip.
It was. We left with $125 and got back 2.5 weeks later with an empty truck and $800, and had a good time the whole time. So that there is part of the beauty of being able to do what we do, because if you want to be a wanderer, you just got to follow that wandering star. You just load your truck up and head in any direction that you want to go in. And these days, when you can sit at a computer and look up everything and have everything all reassured, don't do that. Just blindly head out. Pick some place on the map you want to go to, and when you get there, it'll get all figured out.
Just make sure you carry carvings with you, because you're always treated as royalty then, Okay. And, so this is something that I thought I could pass on with some people I've met. And so Rich Beyer is a really terrific guy. He just passed away 2 years ago, and he was a really prolific artist in Washington State who did sculpture. And he did great big wood carvings. He had a giant Sasquatch in the Seattle Public Market, and he did some other, quite a few other things out of wood. Most of his work he cast in aluminum and carved it out of styrofoam, and then he buried it in sand and cast it. And but when we met, we hit it off real well because he had a weird sense of humor too. And so he had an idea that, and we were talking about the idea about how you make artwork and then you try to get people to come and see it, or you put it in a show or a gallery or whatever. And we were talking about how the chainsaw carvers get out there and we put the art out in front of the people so that people can, it's right there, it's easy to access, and we have a symposium about it and talk about ideas. So I met Rich when I was learning how to carve stone, and he was one of the teachers. So anyway, this is some of his work, and so he got his first commission for some public art where the community got to vote for what they wanted, and he always railed against people get this public art and they wonder, what the hell is that? Where did that come from? Because he said some committee would look at different pieces of art and then they'd buy it and put it in the community, and then the community a lot of times, it may not be what they wanted at all. You're sort of stuck with it. So he had the idea about, well, let's put art out there in these communities and then let the people choose what they want. And so, and he came up with this, there was a little square in one of the neighborhoods in Seattle where they had a competition. There was an old historic wagon was one of the submissions, and then he had one where he had these people waiting for the bus, basically. And so he got chosen by the people. They voted, but the mayor didn't like it, the local neighborhood mayor. So there was a picture back there where it had all these people waiting for the transportation to show up, and in behind there's a little figure, you can't quite see it, but he put a dog in there too, and the dog has the mayor's face on it. And so the people love this piece. They, the public, they dress it up for different occasions. There's balloons hanging off it. You go by it, and then there's a family down here that he did. These are life-size pieces, and these are cast aluminum as well. That he did the originals in either styrofoam or wood, and then cast them. And so this is called whale watching, I think, the lower left one. And then on the right, there's a businessman in Seattle that had a seafood restaurant. It's called Acres of Clams, and he would invite people to come down and have some seafood and feed the seagulls French fries. So the local town, or the town administrators in Seattle didn't like that idea because they said, it's really unhealthy to be feeding seagulls food right there near a restaurant on the waterfront. And well, Ivor didn't care. He just encouraged people anyway. So when Rich Beyer made a memorial for Ivor, he made the seagulls 3 times life size, and then he was famous for selling clams. So underneath the chair, there are these little clams running around with legs, and they have big balls. And then you can sit in the chair and get your photo taken in front of the restaurant too. So that was. But anyway, Rich had this idea, so that I started participating in. So I took one of my pieces from the Westport contest, and there was a show coming up where you send in a photo, and then they look at all the different pictures that people send in, and then they choose 20 artists, and they put them out in the park or around the little town, and then they give you a little money to defray expenses and help you with the installation, and then the public gets to choose their favorite ones, and then they raise money and all that, and then they buy the whatever the sculpture is, and there are different mediums. There's you have wood, metal, stone, clay, anything that'll hold up to the elements. And so so I was lucky enough to where I couldn't believe it. I got in the show, and then I got the highest vote. And so it's, holy cow, they bought my piece. And so now I have a permanent piece in this one park. And so I got into some more. And the other thing too is the prices. When they asked me, well, how much are you going to price it for? And so I told them, and they said, well, why? And well, why? What's the problem? Is that too expensive? And they go, no, it's way too cheap. I mean, all these other artists, this, steel person and that stone person and this one over here, I mean, you're only like 1/4 of the price of theirs. I mean, you're going to make everybody look way out of whack, So they said, can you put a little higher price on it? So I did, and that's what they wound up buying it from me for too. So at the time, like they bought it from me for $10,000, which was really great. Wow! It's like cashing in a CD you couldn't get to, and the price I had on originally was about $2,500, and so the idea there was so what I did is I brought a couple of things here. I will bring them up, but where all these little towns have started taking on this program where what they'll have is every year they'll have a call for artists, and they'll bring in 20 new pieces, and then they'll put them all around the town, and the people get to live with it for a year, and then the town and they have an art committee, and they all vote on it. They try to raise money, and so they buy 1 or 2 a year and add it to their permanent collection. So there's like a little town of Puyallup where we had the very first wood carving competition. That's just a little farm town, and they have something like 45 or 50 permanent sculptures all around this little town. Plus, they have 20 more every year that they bring in to add to their current show. And so it's a thing that you might think about when you go home, that, well, how could you get art out in front of the public a little bit more so they don't, some people they'll never step foot into a gallery, they may never find your shop, but, and the idea here is that the artist needs to be able to have a chance to sell them. So they need to know that they're for sale, they need to know who made it, and so, hang on, I have this is a plaque, a typical plaque they put on the base of the sculptures, and they stick them on there so that they are well put on. Sometimes kids swipe them, but not very often. And but it tells the title, the name, who made it, what is it made from, the price. It has a website, and then some of the more current ones actually have a little scanning code on there where you can put your phone on there, scan it, goes right to the artist's website, tells more about the artist, where you can find them, and it shows a map of where you can see more art. And then some of them also have a little, I recommend, there's these little plastic boxes like the real estate places that when you're looking, they've got a lid you can lift up, keeps the rain out. You pull out a real estate brochure. Well, the local real estate people will donate some of these boxes, and they'll put one by each sculpture, and it'll have a brochure in it. So the brochure, you pull it out, and it has photos of the art. It has how to contact the artist, what the art is in there, how much it costs. There's a scanning. This one has a scanning code right here at the bottom, and there's a map on here where you can walk around the town and see the art. So the merchants love it because all these people are parading around town, and they're going, oh, look, there's a restaurant right here next to this one. And while they're getting their photo taken, they notice, oh, let's go into this place. And so it really works quite well. Sometimes it's hard to get it off the ground, of course, like anything. And it's good to have a multimedia type of a thing, so you have a lot of different mediums represented, more artists to draw from. Or you could, if you have enough wood carvers, you could just do an all wood type show. So that's the basic idea, though. The public gets to choose what they add to their permanent collection, and then hopefully the program moves on. And so a whole bunch of these little towns have sprung up all around the Seattle area because of Rich Byer's idea. And now there's probably, I would say, 20 communities between where we live and down into Portland, Oregon, that have these events. And some of them throw a huge party that's a fundraiser with music and food and everything else, and auctions and all that stuff.
a stipend.
A stipend, oh yeah, and then, and they're all, they're all a little different. Say, I try to get them to communicate with each other so they don't have to reinvent the light bulb. And so some of them have a stipend where they'll give you up to $1,000 to bring in your piece and take it away later. So you get some money to help finance, because you know how boom trucks are expensive and transportation and all that, and other ones have no money to give you, but they have people that'll help you, and so it all varies. I have a few pieces still sitting around where I wish I could sell them, and instead of sitting around the shop, well, if I can get them into a show, maybe I could get $500 or $1,000 just for renting them out, basically for a year, and then people see them, and then they contact you and want to know about maybe making something else for them. They never want to buy the piece, it seems like, but though every once in a while I have sold a few of them, and so it's just one other way to do it, but it gets like I said, gets the art out in front of the public.
You might mention Cafe, the internet connection of artists with things like this, and shows and festivals. You know Cafe?
Cafe,
I haven't forwarded it to him yet.
Okay.
I'm kind of technologically challenged, but you spell it C-A-F-E?
Yeah, the E is accent.
Cafe, okay.
I've been receiving it. I'll email it to you.
Yeah.
So Cafe is a good online market.
Online, well, it's the way shows and people get connected with artists, that it has a portfolio set that you put all your stuff in, and then you could submit to, say, a public art call.
Yeah,
it's a call that they have for artists, and you choose what call you're responding to.
It varies from $100,000 projects in Miami
Yes.
to a little art show in Idaho
Right.
that you could participate in. And I was telling you about it.
That's great. There's the Artist Trust is another one that's a good website.
Artist Trust, okay.
They have a kind of a want-ad section
Yeah.
for different
Cafe
mediums.
is associated with application.
Huh?
Associated with Zapplication.
Yeah, with application process too.
Well, Zapplication
Oh,
is kind of
Zapplication,
this.
no, I
I'm
don't
pretty
think.
sure they're connected.
Yeah, they're connected.
Oh, are they?
It might pull up on the website better.
But that's how a lot of the big art shows and stuff are taking applications
Right.
now.
Yeah, this is what this is set up to do.
Okay.
Yep.
Pat's kind of the wine and cheese crowd. I'm more of the beer and fork pickup crowd.
I do both, but yeah, the whole that whole process of just getting into a show
Yes.
can be a problem, or it can be really easy. And the more you know the art commissioners and people personally, you find they're just real people like us, and they're not somebody that's in some sort of a fortress up there trying to keep you out. And although one of the big problems I have, because I like to do pieces that tell stories, I have narrative art, then I run into people who maybe they're having a show and the judges are all people who've come out of the universities where they're studying conceptual art, which has another whole look to it, and they don't like narrative art, so I'm always, I get rejected a lot. And the wine and cheese thing is, Steve always teases me about it, but I remember when I got invited to this big show across the water, and they were having it. It's all based on wood, so I had a huge carving right in the doorway. These big bears that are swinging each other around in a dance, and it was really an honor to be around these other carvers that were really good. And we're all standing around the gallery director, and we have our wine and our cheese on a little platter, and we're all talking in a circle. And this is like my first big show, and I remember somebody said something funny, and I went, ha! And this little piece of cracker went flying up in the air like that, and it landed right on the plate of the gallery director, and everybody went like this, nobody said a word.
This is it.
We're good friends now.
If you get to downtown Seattle and go to the Pike Place Market, when you walk down,
When you walk to the bottom of the stairs, this is a sculpture that Pat made. It's at the base of the stairs. And this was a Doug fir stump that had been pushed around with a bulldozer for like 10 years on Whidbey Island. Someone dug it up and they rolled it around and they burned on it. And Pat took it and recycled it into some magnificent public art that's, downtown Seattle at Pike Place Market. got some big recognition to it. People come down, they rub it for luck. But that was just an old junky Doug fir stump that they push around.
Yeah, it was all full of rocks and burned and everything, and they've been trying to get rid of it for years. Anyway, but I didn't go through a committee or anything. I just happened to know some guys who had they took people out fishing, and then they started doing tours with a boat, and they got a nicer boat, and then they decided to take people on trips up the Inside Passage to Alaska, and they had a ticket booth right here across from the aquarium. It was just a little tiny thing, and it was the size of an outhouse practically, and so they wanted something that would attract people to their booth because it was in a great location. So I did a trade with them for 2 different trips, 2 different years for 2 people plus airfare and all that. We went on a yacht up from Seattle all the way up the Inside Passage to Juneau, Alaska, and they had a gourmet cook. They had a hot tub on the top deck, and it was a small boat that only hauled about 12 people, and so they put all the tour guides that they were trying to sell tours to, and so we were the first trip out for the season, and there was one guy that was a mechanic and a musician, and so it was all a friendly group, and the cook was so good that it looked like I was 3.5 months pregnant by the time I got off that boat a week later, and then the next year, and then they flew, the 2 of us went, and they flew us back, and then the next year I got to go again, this time from Juneau to Sitka, Alaska, through all these little beautiful islands and stuff. So that's how that piece wound up there, is I just traded them for that sculpture for these 2 trips, which were, worth about, I don't know, for 4 people, it'd be 2 people, 2 different years, and so it'd be about like $12,000 in trade if you had to pay for it, but that's how I wound up with it there. And then the aquarium across the road called one day and said, "Hey, we're remodeling and we need a sea otter carved." And I said, "Oh, that's great. Well, when do you need it?" They go, "Well, in about 5 days." And so I wound up making, that's my little boy when he was a year old, but he's 13 now. But they wanted something that kids could sit on in front of the sea otters and watch them play. So this was an interesting project where 5 days. Well, so I went out and I found a cedar log that had a little hole through it. And because if you have a hole and the center's gone, it's way more stable wood. And so you know that it's not going to crack too much when you get it finished. So it had a little tiny hole about this big on one end, and then the other end had a little bit, slightly bigger hole. So great, this is perfect. I cut into it. There was a gigantic ant nest in there that Steve could have laid down inside, and these ants were just boiling out everywhere, and I don't know how. I've very rarely ever seen a piece of wood where a little tiny hole, and then it's this huge cavity. But anyway, so I finally I relocated all the ants, and I had to. So I made an actual lid for that. The kelp that the thing is actually a piece that fits on there, and I had to fit it all around the head and the arms and then it has a little baby sea otter on the backside, and then another one right here on the right. There used to be just a curl of the tail that came around, and then a little kid at the aquarium got their head stuck in that hole, and they called me up and they go, "Oh, you got to do something with that hole." So I put another head in there, kind of so you can move it. It actually moves around if you push it a little bit, but it's fixed in there really well, and I also made it look like it might bite. And but anyway, when I got the whole thing down there, I had it, unloaded it off of this big cart that I had, and then the cart collapsed because it was so heavy, and we got it all the way pushed almost to the door, and I looked down when I was pushing, and right by my nose was an ant, just one ant, and then I go, well, geez, I hope the aquarium's still here in a few years. But where they put it was cement walls and a cement floor, and so they can hose everything out and all that. So that was.
We've all worked under pressure before, but the best one ever. We live on an island, and so there's a ferry ride. It's about a 15-minute ferry ride, so there's a little cushion there. And Pat had taken an order, about a 6-foot something or other, and of course he hadn't started it. And the guy calls from Uncle Teal and says, "Hey man, I'm coming down. I want to check on the progress of my sculpture." So he had his 20-minute deadline out to the 394, cranks it up, blows it, walks it out real quick, like the tang of the cedar is in the air when the guy pulls in, and he's like, "Oh, that looks great."
Yeah, the guy lived about 6 hours away, and I thought, well, where are you? And he goes, well, I'm just ready to get on the ferry. Anyway, so this is one of those public art programs in a local town, the brochure I showed you, and this was a piece I did at Cedar Woolley where it's called Salmon Romance, and it's all about, I did a series on salmon, and so this one represents the spawning and their frenzy of regeneration. So one of the art commissioners goes, "What's that giant phallic symbol on the corner down there?" You know, but actually that is part of the idea there, where the male, the big one sticking up represents the male part, and then there's the female part down below, and then the splash is all kinds of liquid activity going on, and so, but it's a piece that's subtle enough to where it doesn't offend the public, but it has an idea behind it. And then the salmon, they swim out to sea, and then they go all the way around the Pacific Ocean, come back in and find the very same little stream they were born in, and then they spawn, and they start the whole new generation, and then they die, and the little babies hatch out, and they're too weak to eat, so they just open their mouths, and the bodies of their parents are floating downstream in little chunks and float into their mouths, and they actually start over that way, and then they build up enough strength after a few months, and they get into a little deeper water, and eventually they work their way out to sea, and the whole cycle starts over again. They got to go all the way around the ocean, and they're chased by everything, predators and fishermen and all that. But this piece, we're installing it here, and you can see the town built these concrete pedestals. This is one way they do it. There's all kinds of different ways, and there's a bolt pattern on the top of the concrete, and so you have to have a piece of metal on the bottom of your piece that matches that bolt pattern. So they send it out to you on a piece of paper, and then you make sure. So I had to have a welder friend made up a nice plate for me, and it fit. It worked great. It went right on there. Everything worked fine. We've had a couple of them where, installation, they get out the big hammer and they go whack, and it might move something over a little bit. But there's other ways of doing this where in the town of Puyallup, they want you to put metal on the bottom, and then they have metal already on the pedestal, and then they have a welder come in. They put the sculpture on there for a year, and then they weld it on. And then when you go to pick it up later, they cut the weld off, and then off it goes. And they usually have the boom trucks come in on the day of the installation and the de-installation. They're on the same day, so they're pulling pieces off, putting the new ones on, all on the same day. So this piece, you have to think about, if it's going to be out in public, this one would be very climbable. So I took an extra piece of cedar, put it on the bottom to get it up off, so that any kid, they'd have to start it here to start climbing on it. And I've had pretty good luck with things not being broken off and that sort of thing. And this is another one of those typical a tag, and it has a scanner, a scan code on it. And let's see, does it have someone to contact? Yeah, there you go. Purchase, you got a website, stop by City Hall, that type of thing. The best things are when they have the little brochure right there and the tag and everything, and because you don't want to, the worst thing is to go to these shows, and I've been in some where people have no idea who made it, that it's for sale, anything, so you don't even have a chance to sell it. So it's really tough. At least this way you have hope. This is, I did a lot of work with salvaged wood, like you guys probably, and that was a treetop here. There was a show coming up at in the city of Bellevue where the theme was recycling, and so this was a broken treetop that had all these branches sticking out. It's Lebanese cedar. So I carved a guy being strangled by junk mail, and I went down to the thrift store and found a mailbox, and pounded out the side, and so two of the branches come up into the mailbox, and I carved that into mail, and then it looks like it's actually choking him. And then I put some slate stone at the bottom, and then it's on top of a piece of cedar as well too. So, and it's about 12 feet high or so. And this bench just went up to a little sculpture park up on one of the other islands, on San Juan Island, and I didn't. My wife said, "Oh, don't put that in there. You got to put better work in there than that." But the people just loved it, so that worked out well. And
showed her.
Yeah, I have to explain to her all the time. Now, yours isn't the only taste in art. This is kind of a bad photo, but I did this as part of I can't remember the theme of the show, but it had this piece was carved from a stump that was on a pile that was going to get burned, and so I made it into a chair, and then there's a book carved in the back of it. And the photo is not very good to show the book, but it's an open book, and it goes in front of the library that they just built in this park. And this one was chosen by the people as the purchase it. So I wound up, it was there for a year, and then they bought it from me. But I made it look like it was actually growing there originally. And it's right next to some beautiful cedars and a redwood.
That grow like
and it looked like one just got chopped off right there. So I call it an endangered species because when you go into the new library, there's no books on the first floor. It's all electronics. And so it's kind of like the idea of that going away. And then also, you know, the tree cutting idea looks like it's going away there. And then also that was when Dick Cheney was in office. I was thinking about, information and public speech and all that. So anyway, the endangered species idea is pretty popular. And then this was, I collaborated with my nephew's my nephew's a glass blower, and then we had a friend that works in the boatyard. So we came up with this spaceship idea, and so those are glass flames that are about a little over 2 feet long coming out of there, and this is in that sculpture park up on San Juan Island. I just installed that, and that once again, this is a place where they don't give you any money, but they put you up in a really beautiful inn, and they reimburse you for your expenses. So all these programs are different.
But you have a chance to sell them.
But there's a chance of selling it because it's in a high-end place where they, right below it, it's a yacht harbor, and then there's a little airport where these rich people fly in, and so, you always have hope. And then this is where I was a few days ago doing snow sculpture, and I've never been able to come to Ridgeway because this always coincided on the same dates, and so these builders go up there and they build this giant snow castle, and then we go up there and decorate it. And there was a dragon tearing the castle apart one year, and then up there we did a knight being thrown from his horse, and a dragon scaring the horse, and then we carve windows into the castle with characters in there, and put gargoyles and trolls, and we have piles of snow where kids can climb all over it, and then there's designs carved inside of it and that kind of thing too. It's like, we do here at Ridgeway where you say, hey, come on and try it, and so all these people want to, and then these are some of the other different towns around that have these little public art programs, and so there's a source there if you want to click on it and see how they did it. Oh, yeah. And some of them, you can click on the map and it'll bring up the artists. So,
keep going, or?
Oh, there's, this is just a little chair I made that's before the gouge was invented. I made quite a few of these, and there are all these different shapes, and usually it's a stump that's out in a burn pile somewhere that's really interesting. So that if you ever made chairs, the hard part is making them comfortable, and it's easy to get the chair, but then it takes 6 times longer to make it comfortable. Then I try to carve a little drain in the back in case it's outdoors. This is another one that was in the public square near that's where people go to court, and it's the city hall and all that. This is called the Sailor's Moon. It represents the rising tide. You blow it, and moon, and on the backside is a mermaid riding on a whale. And so they have a new show coming up where I said, well, if it's in front of the courthouse, how about if I did, something like a big giant ball and chain, and then people could put their ankle through it and get their photo taken, or some stocks like the old prisoners. And they really like the idea, but I don't know if I have enough art commissioners on board to vote that one in, And this one was, I tried to make this one look like it had been growing there too, because this is a memorial for a boy who was killed in a car accident on his high school graduation night. He was the only one not wearing a seatbelt, and his parents were, obviously brokenhearted. This was a portrait of his chair that he took to school, and he was known for his sense of humor, and he brought his reading chair to school one day. It's like a Masterpiece Theater chair, and he brought that there to do his book report. So I had the real chair there, and I had calipers and tape measure, and so I had to do an accurate representation of that chair. And then I have his books, and he had a goofy cat, and he played soccer, so they installed it in the park up by the soccer field. And when I sat in it, this is terrible. It's not comfortable at all. And it overlooks the park. Then I realized, wait a minute. If you sit in this cushioned chair, it goes down, right? So I had to carve a butt print in the pad, and then all of a sudden, there it is. It's comfortable. So it's like a ghost is sitting in there already before you. And then this is just another bench. It's called Sea Life with a Nervous Jellyfish. And this represents that, they're shipping all this coal, dirty coal over to China right now, and then they burn it, and then all the pollution comes back over to where we live, and we get the bad air, and then it's acidifying the ocean, and so the higher the acid levels in the ocean goes up, then the more other creatures die off, including shell creatures, and jellyfish love acidic water. So they said if the trend continues, then we'll have mostly jellyfish. And my wife put this in here because that's her favorite bench, and it's just, I try anything to make money, But I did a floral. I like doing flowers, and there's a local botanical gardens that I've done all these flower pieces for, and signage and benches and that kind of thing. And so that's just. Oh, and then this is part of a piece where the local kids come down and they release salmon into the creek from the local hatchery, and so that represents the school kids' hands and then the fish pour out of there and they all get bigger. As the thing's 32 feet long, so they all grow as it moves down the line.
There's a lot of effort in the Pacific Northwest to do the salmon re-enhancement, cleaning up creeks and things of that nature. This is on Whidbey Island, and it's brought salmon back to this creek that hadn't had salmon in it for 50 years.
Yeah, it's pretty neat when we get a lot of rain, and the road will flood, and you're driving along, and then all of a sudden here goes a salmon across the road, and I could make a few jokes out of that. So this is the piece that was in the film that I was working on in Westport, and on the left, that's just one piece of wood, one piece of Sitka spruce. It was a half a log, and so it represents the Macaw Indians tribe out on the ocean who hunt whales, and there was a big controversy about them hunting whales a few years ago. So I did that piece at Westport, and this represents them 300 years ago when the first explorers came through, and they chronicled natives going out there. They said they wore practically no clothes at all, and it's freezing out there, and they used seal skins for floats, and they wove cedar bark together to make ropes, and and sometimes the whale would break their boats up when they're out at sea. So that's what's happening here is the boats get broken up, they're all falling out, and it's called "Oh no, not again." So I tried different things over the years. At first this was all sanded and it was a nice wood color with varnish. And then later it started weathering out. So I'm putting on gray stain to try to make it look like it's weathered gray. Instead of waiting 10 years for it to do that, and then let the sun and the rain take over. Then later on I tried it with rubbing in a little color, and I mixed varnish with some pigments, and I'm trying to get some translucent color to go into the wood and bring the color through it. So you still see the wood and you have color too. So I tried different methods over the years. And then lately, a neighbor builds houses and he gives me scraps of treated wood. So I put treated wood on the bottom of all my pieces now, so that when you go and see them a few years later and somebody put bark dust all up against it, that at least it still has a little extra protection. And I try to recommend that people put it on stone blocks and bricks, but the treated wood helps to just give it a little extra. Some of the blocks are that thick. It depends on how big the piece is. So it's disappointing, after doing all that work, and you go back years later, and it just didn't get taken care of. And whereas other ones, Steve carves a lot of stumps, and he says, you can just really tell the difference of the people who take care of them and the people who don't. And then this was the first piece I ever put in one of those shows, and that was a Westport piece, and it's 4 feet across and 8 feet high, and it's all one piece of wood, and it's carved in a double helix, and it represents the life cycle of salmon. So they're hatching out of these little eggs at the bottom, and then they stream out of the eggs, and then they're getting bigger as it spirals up, and then it goes back down, and then the last one's spawning over the eggs again, and then they're turning into bones at the bottom. And Steve always teases me that 4 days just isn't enough, because it took me like another 6 months to finish that piece after Westport was over. So.
Pat was famous, and still is, for coming to a competition and doing an order or doing something along them lines. And but truth be told, he's got several of these competition pieces that have ended up in these public places with decent prices on them. So he's one of the leaders that has kind of bridged that gap between the chainsaw carving and the fine art community. And it takes starting out, 4 days isn't enough.
Yeah, and it really does. You just got to keep carving, and the big pieces don't sell very fast, and you know how that goes. And so I haven't figured out an easy way.
There's no secret.
When Pete was doing these films, he interviewed my kid and said, "Well, what do you think about your dad being a wood carver like that?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's pretty cool, except my mom says it doesn't make much money."
Okay, let me try to get your film running here if I can.
Oh yeah, we have one final short film that you guys will get a laugh out of, and it tells how things really are.
Yeah, this next one coming up, this is pure fantasy. It's the Hollywood producer types have been chasing the chainsaw carving game. There's been Saw Dogs and Chainsaw Gang, and a few shows have actually made it into the surface. And this guy contacted me. Actually, the Saw Dogs guy and this fellow contacted me on the same day. But I thought, geez, what's all these LA guys? This started 4 or 5 years ago. And so he browbeat us into making a pilot episode for a reality show, and it hasn't sold. I've never met the LA producer guy, Rich Ross. We've talked to the phone 100 times and email and stuff, and he's kind of dropped out of sight. But he called up a couple months ago and said, "Oh, I sold this to some big shot." And so this is just the self-shot pilot, made up, complete bullshit story.
Yeah.
My wife didn't want us to play it because it doesn't make us look that good, but what are you gonna do?
Buy some more time, Steve. I got to
Hollywood,
reboot.
Oh, okay.
Well, they wanted us to have good guys and bad guys, and so it's got reality TV or the political debates or Jerry Springer.
Tell us about your shoot last summer with the chair for the airlines and your football player.
Oh, Steve, yeah. Oh.
I was out there for the Port Gamble show, and these guys, it's really unique what these guys do with these commercials.
Well, yeah, and like I said earlier, there's all this is multi-layered, built over relationships. One of my sister's ex-husbands is in the film industry. Got one sister and a bunch of ex-brother-in-laws. But anyways, he works in the making the films. He's the guy that behind the scene that builds the sets and things of that nature. And there's a pretty tight little community of them making commercials and stuff in the Northwest. And they got a hold of me to do the thing for Alaskan Airlines with Russell Wilson throwing a football, and I was doing the Port Gamble contest on 4th of July, and Jerry was out there, and I'm running the show. I had no time to do it, so I made it into a little competition between Dave Tremko and Matt Holsnagel, this young kid. Both of them, $500 a piece. carved this football player holding a football, and then they wanted an airline chair carved as well. So we made this little airline chair up. And the guy that came out, he said, "Oh, that's cool," and they pay good. You stick them and they pay it. That's one thing nice about the film industry and along them lines. So we made the football player, and then it was Tuesday afternoon at like 5 o'clock when the hard-pressed producer gal calls up, and she says, "No, we need an airline chair that someone can sit in with a fold-down back gate and a little plug-in that they can demonstrate plugging in the phones. It's got armrest and headrest." And we're like, "Holy
USB.
crap!" And this is Tuesday afternoon at 5 in the afternoon, and we're just getting back after doing a 4-day show. And they needed it Thursday morning at 6 o'clock in Carnation, which is about 30 miles east of Seattle. And we just like, oh my God! And fortunately, Tomas Verba, if you've seen his stuff on the forums and stuff, he lives just across the water, and he'd given me these redwood logs that were like 5 feet in diameter and 5-foot chunks. And so the morning we got up Wednesday morning, you kind of almost assume that these TV people know what they're doing. And and we cranked it out in one day and got it loaded up and got it delivered down there, and set it up. And it turns out the whole TV commercial kind of focused on this particular chair because the captain plugs his phone in, and that's what they were pumping, was the new plugins on airline chairs for plugging your phone in. And but it was fast paced. It was fun. There must have been 150 people on the shoot, and as I was wheeling the carvings down to the edge of the road so we could get him and pick him up, because he couldn't pull the truck up in. I had to wheel him, from here to the street down. Of course, Bose and Nanette were out having a cigarette, and I did it by myself. And as I'm standing there, Russell Wilson's bus is parked like right here. So here he comes around the corner with his entourage, and I'm standing there like this close, and so I saluted, and then he gave me a fist bump. So I got me a fist bump for Russell Wilson. That was kind of cool. And then we charged them like $3,300 for all this stuff. They put us under a lot of pressure.
Russell Wilson, he's the Seattle Seahawks quarterback.
Oh, they know.
Yeah, so, but in the old days, when the Seahawks were no good, we went down to, they had the Kingdome, which was the big old stadium, and so Steve and I loaded up the truck,
one of them broke deals. God, what are we going to work? How are we going to make some money? And Pat's like, well, let's go down and set up in front of the Kingdome. Okay.
Yeah. They're having a Seahawks game today. So we had, and I had done a couple of Seahawks carvings, and so we had one of them on the tailgate, and we had stuff piled high. And we got down there nice and early, and so we pulled in right across from the main gate. And we had a crowd that was just, oh man, we were handing out business cards, and we had about, I don't know, we had made a couple sales, and then we noticed that across the way, it was election season. So there were 4 politicians set up, shaking hands and handing out pamphlets. And they were running for senator. And then next thing you know, these 2 guys with big...
Hey, are these for sale? Yeah, they are. They flipped out code enforcement and said, well, you got to get the hell out of here.
Yeah. They had like the sunglasses, these security guys. So we got ran out pretty fast. But we made enough contacts to where we had worked for 4 months, I think.
And the next day, someone called me that had got a card and drove up to the island and bought a carving I had in the truck for $850. And that was in 1986 or something.
Yeah. We've been thrown out of some of the best places around.
Yeah.
All right, we're ready to go with your video
we
here.
picked a pretty fancy place.
You guys have been very patient. Thanks.
Yeah, man. This is all fake.
And you can get this video from Pete Wyatt, along with the Westport video and the first Westport, the 2 you saw already, plus this one. It's all on one disc. And what's he selling for? $20? You gotta order them.
I'll give Ed the information. Yeah. Pete said he'd have his web thing up.
Where's the sound?
Family business of chainsaw carvers in Vietnam. Get your carving panties. We need you to carve something here. My name is Steve Backus. Family business of chainsaw carvers in the industry.
All right, one more time.
Get your carving panties. We need you to carve something here. My name is Steve Backus, and I'm
Chainsaw Wood Carving Company, Big Shot Wood Carving. He's the only real family business of chainsaw carvers in the industry that's made up of uncles and brothers and sisters and cousins, and everybody plays a vital role in what we do.
And we got a carbless NASCAR for this guy. He's a big hotshot executive. I don't know what a NASCAR is. It's a fast race car, Dad. It's like a race car. They go around in a big circle. His 14-year-old son's birthday is coming up, and he wants to give him almost scale NASCAR. So he said this is for a 14-year-old kid? For a 14-year-old kid. Wouldn't you rather have a carving of a naked girl? Yeah. It cost him $50 grand to build this project, and we got to have it done next Saturday. We got to start tomorrow morning. Well, let's go down there and get the damn tree cut. We got a kid that's going to run the saw. We got to make sure the tree doesn't fall on him or anybody else. Put that truck right out there beside Chelsea's car. I'll be there with the son.
Get your ass over here right now!
When my son Boone destroyed the windshield of the truck, or the car rather, I was just totally pissed, and I was just so pissed off. I just didn't need to have it happen. He would have just followed some simple directions.
It's his fault. It's his fault because I'm not ready yet.
Winging the truck around, getting everything in position, moving all them levers in conjunction. That's a little bit of an artist's job in making that happen.
Ever since you got out of rehab, you've been a bitch.
I'm a little edgy without my drugs.
The hard part about working with family is that they always say bad words.
You draw the fucking thing on there. It was your idea.
Actually, it wasn't my idea. It was an order, remember? Here, I'm getting hungry. Let me draw this son of a bitch.
It's got a little smaller than the other one.
Well, jump in there and show us then, Mrs. Smarty Pants.
Well, I mean, I worked with my parents mostly throughout my life. It's all right. There's some rough patches. My dad and I kind of, he's probably the person I'm going to have the most conflict with. Him and I, it's like fighting with the mirror. We're very similar, and sometimes he's the most infuriating man ever.
Well, Dave, our friend Dave, can fix the cars. Stepped in dog crap, and then I guess stepped it on the board. So when I got up this morning, there was a big pile of sawdust. Steve Puck was too tired to deal with it in the proper way, so he just took a pile of sawdust.
She does not understand it. And then sometimes I might step in shit, you know, what are you gonna do? Why'd you tie the dog there? Since the beginning, everybody has their role to play. I wanted my brother Bose. Brother Bose has got many talents, and some of them quite hidden. But when it comes to the design and a steady hand on making things happen, he can get right in there and make the correct cuts exactly what they're needed.
Hey, buddy, you want to work on the car, dude? You want to burn? Come on, dude, let's get into it.
Okay.
Get ready. You know the same way to hand someone the torch? Don't aim it at yourself. Don't aim it at him.
Private or something with maybe off-white. It's the only real family business of chainsaw carvers in the industry that's made up of uncles and brothers and sisters and cousins, and everybody plays a vital role in what we do and produce. Extreme Chainsaw!
I know you guys.
It's you know, we've been around that TV thing enough now where it's like, it's an industry.
Yeah.
And I know you guys want to get out of here and get back to carving, but we didn't get paid for this. We just, our buddy Pete came over to the island. We got the family together, and we did it, you know, in hopes that we'd be famous and make a lot of money on TV, but we didn't.
It took 6 months of herding cats to get that 5 minutes.
Yeah, and so in order to get everybody there and all the tour, yeah, and so what we did is we went ahead and finished out the plot. And the plot was, you know, of course, that this kid, 14 years old, spoiled kid, rich guy wants to pay us, how much was it?
$50,000.
$50,000 to make this. That's the plot, you know, and that's his birthday present, right? So we had one of our relatives has a nice house in a nice neighborhood, and so we drove the car over there, all finished up to deliver the birthday present, and we go knock on the door. You know, we all carry the car up to the door, across the lawn, and up the sidewalk, and the guy answers the door, and he's the one who made the deal. And so, oh, okay, and then he calls, his wife comes in, and she takes one look at it and goes, I don't like it. And then they go, well, let's call our son down. So he comes down, and this kid, the 14-year-old, looks at him and he goes, I don't like it. And then she goes, sorry, we don't like it. And they close the door, and then we're left there knocking on the door, you know. And that was the end of it, you know.
But the producer guy didn't think that was very smart, so you didn't see it.
Yeah. So Pete sent off all the rough footage that he filmed for this, and then the guy in Hollywood put this little pilot together with his professionals in Hollywood, and then he didn't like the ending that we came up with. He said, well, you have to have a nice positive ending, you know.